Hello, good evening, and welcome to Joy News Prime on the Joy News channel, live from our studio here in Koko Mlemle, Accra. We're live on DSTV channel 421, GoTV channel 144 around the world on myjoyonline.com. Coming up, state prosecutors left with no other choice but to potentially start a fresh trial for Gregory Afoko as a jury of his peers is unable to return a unanimous verdict of guilty over the death of MPP Regional Chairman Adams Mahama. We have details as one other accused person is sentenced to death by hanging for the offense of conspiracy to commit murder. Also, President Akufo-Addo demands that Al Jazeera retract and apologizes for airing The Golden Mafias, a documentary he considers as inaccurate and unfair. Now, also in the bulletin, study by the NCCE on preventing violent extremism in Ghana reveals families are now willing to encourage close relations to join extremist groups. We'll bring you the details and also hear from the NCCE on what they want to be done immediately to sensitize the public. Now, the Chebi Hene Osare Mama for Kwabrane is demanding the presence of the former chairman of the Interministerial Committee on Illegal Mining, Professor Frimpong Boateng, in Chebi to show them the exact position where the illegal mining took place that resulted in the destruction of the garden of the president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, in his hometown of Chebi. According to the chief, the allegation is unfounded and an embarrassment to the state of Chebi. Osarabia Makwabrane says they will not rest until finality is brought to the issue. I spoke to Joy News in Chebi. More on that later, but my colleague Elton Brobe spent the whole day at the private residence of President Akufo-Addo to verify claims that part of his garden was destroyed by illegal miners.
So in 2021, Professor Kwabena Frimpong Boateng, then chairman of the ministerial committee that was responsible for stopping illegal mining, wrote to the chief of staff upon a request by the chief of staff to furnish the office on the work of the ministerial committee and then offer a way forward to address the issue of illegal mining on Galamsey. Now, so in 2021, Professor Kwabena Frimpong Boateng, then chairman of the ministerial committee that was responsible for stopping illegal mining, wrote to the chief of staff upon a request by the chief of staff to furnish the office on the work of the ministerial committee and then offer a way forward to address the issue of illegal mining or Galamsey. Now, the response, which was supposed to be a confidential document, has become a matter of intense media scrutiny in the last few weeks because of the content in the report, where he alleges that some government functionaries were actually engaged in Galamsey, frustrated the works of the anti-Galamsey committee. But one key issue that came out was the fact that illegal mining was actually taking place in the residence of President Akufo-Addo at Chebi, the president's hometown. Now, page 29 of the documents makes reference to a call he received from somebody who works at the National Security Secretariat. And this call, the person said that somebody, and he described the person as the Chebi youth organizer of the MPP, had undertaken illegal mining in the residence, or private residence of President Akufo-Addo at Chebi in the eastern region. According to him, he followed up on the complaint and found out that it was indeed true, and that they had to quickly mobilize some excavators and bulldozers to restore the vegetative cover of the president's garden and also reclaim the land. Now, today, we are at Chebi, the hometown of President Akufo-Addo, and indeed standing right in front of the president's private residence. Now, we're going to take a look inside the residence and to establish whether or not something of that nature actually took place. One of the households is here with me. His name is, you are live on Joy News. What is your name?
My name is Christopher Akrumolga.
And you are a member of the household of the president?
Yes, please, I am.
Right, so this residence that we are standing in front of, can you describe who occupies this residence?
Yes, the place is a residential area for the president. And actually, we have an old lady who stays here by name Antiefia. And then we are also here 24/7 for security reasons.
Can you point us to the garden which is in reference here?
Yes, I may say we don't have any garden in the house, as we can all see. We can all see this palm nut trees. That is over about 40-something years or 50-something years that we all came and met. And then there are big trees that are here that even the president himself is somebody who really likes trees and those kind of. So since I have been here, nobody allows to take even let me say, a leaf from a tree.
President, could this be the garden that Professor Frimpong Boateng made reference to, that it was the place that this youth organizer of Chebi undertook illegal mining activity that destroyed part of the garden, and he had to bring in excavators to restore the vegetation cover of the garden and also reclaim the land? Could this be the place that he spoke about in this document to the Chief of Staff?
Yes, I think maybe this is all what we have as his land. You see, so we don't have a special garden that we said we have a garden here. It's a compound, and then actually that is all what we can see here around. You know, there's nothing been changed in the house here. So if somebody is here to say there was a garden and there was a galamsey mined out, we can all see the difference between a mined out area and somewhere that is not mined.
Well, so that's a tour to the president's private residence in Chebi to ascertain whether or not that particular happening did occur. Now, I've been joined in studio by the National Communications Officer of the NDC, Sami Jainfi, who addressed a press news conference to state the party's position on what was happening in terms of that explosive report put out by the former chairman of the Interministerial Committee on Illegal Mining, Professor Kwabena Frimpong Boateng. Sami, grateful that you could join us here. Now, you've seen the president's private residence in Chebi. It doesn't look like anything happened.
Well, I think that what the president is doing is that he's creating his own distortions, and he's proceeding to defend his own distortions. It's like a student who goes into the examination hall with his own questions and then proceeds to answer those questions.
How do you say so?
Because if you read Professor Frimpong Boateng's report, he did not say that illegal mining activities or illegal mining had taken place in the residence of the president. He didn't say so. And I want to read to you what he said verbatim so that you can appreciate what is happening, a charade and nothing more. Last paragraph of page 29 of the 37-page report of Professor Frimpong Boateng on Galamsey. It reads, the impunity in the eastern region is exemplified by near unbelievable activity in Chebi. I had a telephone call from Mr. Eric Entry of the Office of the President, and he narrated that the youth organizer of the MPP in Chebi was excavating for gold in a field close to the house of His Excellency, the President of the Republic. He didn't say that the gentleman was excavating for gold in the house.
But
he said, I'll continue, hold on. He said in a field close to his house. Okay? When we checked, it was true. Indeed, part of the garden of the president had been affected. He didn't say that this garden of the president is within the fence wall of the residence of the president.
No, but the question is, so, which other garden? You had the resident of the house.
Hold on.
That apart from that, they don't have any other garden.
First of all, are you going to? Do you expect these houseboys of the president to expose the president?
No. Do you seriously have any evidence?
No, but I'm saying that let us put what Frimpong Boateng said in proper context. We are creating an impression that Professor Frimpong Boateng said that illegal mining was being done in the house of the president. He said it was being done on a field
and it
close to the house, and it affected the garden. The effect on the garden, he didn't say. No, but even from this picture, even from what is scrolling on the screen, you can describe the plantations there as a garden. So if Frimpong Boateng says that illegal mining was being done on a field close to the president's house, and that affected the garden, you should be finding out from Frimpong Boateng what that effect on the garden was.
No, but he continues to say that.
Yes.
We quickly dispatched a bulldozer and an excavator to the area to reclaim the land and vegetate it. I need not say that nothing happened to the local youth who caused
That's why he said it. So why are we imputing something to Frimpong Boateng when he has not said so?
No, but he said he went to vegetate the garden, didn't he?
He didn't say he vegetated the garden. Read it well. Read it carefully. He said, we quickly dispatched a bulldozer and an excavator to the area. What area? The field close to the house of the president where the illegal mining was taking place. He didn't say that they deployed bulldozers and excavators to the house of the president.
When Elton spoke to some of the residents in the area, they were also shocked to hear that this indeed, the professor says something like that happened.
Every objective and reasonable Ghanaian should be calling for is what the NDC and other civil society organizations are calling for on this matter, which is a bipartisan, televised, public probe into these issues. Because you can see clearly a desperate effort by the presidency and the government to cover up the illegal mining activities of elements in the government and in the ruling party. And this is one of such examples where they are claiming that Professor Frimpong Boateng has indicated in the report that illegal mining has been going on in the residence of the president, when that is not the case. He only said the illegal mining was taking place on a field close to the president's residence, and that the illegal mining had had an impact or an effect on the garden, which effect he did not define. Okay. And so until you interrogate Frimpong Boateng, you will not know what effect he was talking about. Mind you, we are not just talking about an ordinary person. We are talking about the man who was the Minister for Environment and Science and the chairman of the Interministerial Committee against
illegal mining.
A German-trained cardiothoracic surgeon. He gives you the name of the national security operative who called him. Any public probe will obviously have to invite this national security operative for us to ascertain whether he called him or not. And of course, the call logs will be there for us to check from the telcos to ascertain all these things.
Okay.
What the president has done does not in any way answer the serious issues contained in that report.
Okay, so
some of these serious issues, Kojo, include damning revelations by Professor Frimpong Boateng that today the Jubilee House has been turned into the headquarters for Galamsey, a crime scene where presidential staffers, workers at the presidency, high-ups are engaged in indiscriminate mining, destroying our water bodies, destroying our forest reserves, and putting all our lives, in jeopardy.
But the presidency has sort of tried to discredit this particular report you're referring to say that they contain personal grievances by the minister who's trying to put those across. They've sent journalists to the house there, that nothing is happening. Even just today, we are learning that the president is asking...
But what do you expect from them? When you catch a thief, chances are that he would deny that he's not a thief. They are only covering their tracks.
No, but
President Akufo-Addo cannot be a judge in his own cause. The Jubilee House cannot be judges in their own cause. I mean, workers at the Jubilee House. Because they all stand indicted by one of their own, the boss of the Interministerial Committee against illegal mining. And therefore, what you need is an independent inquiry where all of them will be interrogated. Okay? And Professor Frimpong Boateng will also have the opportunity to mount his evidence so that we can do an objective analysis of the evidence. If individuals who have been mentioned in the report are established to be innocent, so be it. But if they are established to be guilty, they must be prosecuted and dealt with in accordance with law. Because you see, what we are talking about is a national crisis. It is something that threatens our very lives. Water is life. And these trees give us the oxygen we breathe for our very sustenance as human beings. And so when you have politicians who promise to fight Galamsey, putting their presidency on the line and so on and so forth, burning the excavators of legal small-scale miners, killing some in the process, turn around to engage in the most obscene form of illegal mining, destroying our water bodies, destroying our forest reserves, stealing over 500 excavators that, according to Professor Frimpong Boateng, they have sold and embezzled the money.
So, Sammy,
then we cannot just sweep these matters under the carpet. These issues must be investigated.
Do I get an understanding that even if we show you a drone footage of the area and there's nothing like that going on, you won't believe what you see?
What were you talking about?
If we give you a drone footage of the current state, I mean, the area Professor Frimpong Boateng was talking about.
What area?
The area around the president.
Do you know the area he was talking about? He spoke of a field close to the president's residence.
But which field could affect the...
So ask Professor Frimpong Boateng that. That is why we need a probe.
Okay. All right.
And please, Professor Frimpong Boateng has also told you that they sent equipment there to reclaim the land. And so no drone will show the Galamsey because the land has been reclaimed.
Okay, thank you.
The vegetation has been reclaimed.
Hold on for me. Still on this particular matter, President Nana Akufo-Addo is demanding that Al Jazeera Media Network retract and apologizes for airing a documentary he considers as inaccurate and unfair. In a letter written by the Secretary to the President, Nana Asante Bedie, to Al Jazeera, he described the documentary as one that contained false and unsubstantiated allegations against the president and the government of Ghana. The president is giving the television network to act on this request within 7 days from the date of receipt of this letter. Let's share with you details of this particular letter written to Al Jazeera. It says the documentary in question made baseless claims that the president acted as a lawyer for one Mr. Alistair Mathias and implied that the president personally benefited unlawfully from an alleged $100 million state infrastructure contract purportedly awarded to Mr. Mathias. Now, it again says in his letter dated 11th April 2023, responding to Al Jazeera's letter of 2nd April the same year, which was received on 6th April, containing these vague and defamatory allegations, the legal counsel to the president, Mr. Kojo Abakan Suman, acting on the instructions of the president, informed Al Jazeera that the president had not been in private practice since the year 2000 and that the president had no recollection of acting as a lawyer, either personally or through his law firm, for Mr. Alistair Mathias or his company, Gold Rest Resources. In those circumstances, further and better particulars were demanded from Al Jazeera to respond adequately to the allegations made in Al Jazeera's letter. Al Jazeera was thus requested to provide information on the period for which the president allegedly provided legal representation to Mr. Alistair Mathias or his company, Gold Rest Resources. Further, Al Jazeera was requested to provide details of the $100 million tender for state infrastructure allegedly given to Mr. Mathias, which he outsourced and kept a percentage in offshore account, as stated in the letter, as well as information on how the president personally benefited unlawfully from the alleged $100 million tender for state infrastructure. Al Jazeera refused or failed to provide these details as requested and went ahead with the broadcast of the documentary. At the end of the documentary, a test was shown contradicting the content of the documentary. Additionally, the subject of the documentary, Mr. Alistair Mathias, denied what he said in the documentary to Al Jazeera's investigative journalist. Now, in light of these blatant denials by Mr. Alistair Mathias and the response from Mr. Isuman, those parts of the documentary ought not to have been included because those statements were not true. So those were, details of the letter to the Al Jazeera. You don't agree that, to be fair, in the absence of any further particulars from Al Jazeera, the documentary should not have gone, and the president can then demand for a retraction. You are calling on the president to, you've labeled him as complicit in this particular documentary.
Well, this is the most laughable comment I have heard of throughout this week. This is nothing but comic relief. And no objective mind who has watched the Al Jazeera Gold Mafia documentary will fall for this gimmick. Look, we are talking about a documentary which has uncovered the illegal activities of a money launderer and a gold smuggler called Alistair Mathias in Ghana. And in this documentary, the guy is caught on tape confessing that he has been smuggling tons of gold from Ghana with the aid and abetment of high functionaries in this government. He says that President Akufo-Addo is his friend and lawyer, and that he's able to do all the money laundering and gold smuggling activities in Ghana because of that friendship. He goes on to say that President Akufo-Addo's government has been awarding him inflated contracts, and that he has been sharing the padded amounts on those inflated contracts with his corrupt collaborators in the government. We have called for a probe. We are saying that, look, if you have nothing to hide, this is a matter that clearly brings the name of the presidency and the entire nation into disrepute. The president should be interested in clearing his name. So let's go for a probe. And then you issue this half-hearted letter, this comical letter,
No, but
to Al Jazeera.
If he has not been,
hold on.
But if he has not been in practice from 2000,
that is a lie.
Right?
That is a lie.
Hey,
that's a barefaced lie, and I'll tell you why. President Akufo-Addo is on record to have said that Justice Unico Lendi and the current Attorney General and Minister of Justice Godfrey Yeboah-Dame are his proteges, and that he trained them as young lawyers in his law office Akufo-Addo, Prempeh, and co-chambers. Godfrey Dame was called to the bar in 2003. So if President Akufo-Addo says he trained Godfrey Dame as a young lawyer in his chamber, how could he have stopped practicing law in 2000? This is common sense. So the fact that President Akufo-Addo was not engaged in active court litigation didn't mean that he was not a partner of Akufo-Addo, Prempeh, and co.
That's he hasn't said that in this letter.
Yes, but when he was asked whether he knew Alistair Matthias or not, he couldn't deny. He said he doesn't recollect. And what Al Jazeera did is what every media organization would do per the ethics of journalism. Okay. They duly incorporated his response in the documentary. So please, it is not true. And for the records, before I leave, you should know, as a matter of public record, that Justice Yoni Kolendi, Justice of the Supreme Court, who President Akufo-Addo says is his protege, who he trained in his law office, was the lawyer for this Alistair Matthias in 2014 when he was arrested in Ghana under the Exwa Mahama government.
You're saying that on record?
I'm saying that on record.
Okay, thank you very much. So that's the National Communications Officer of the National Democratic Congress, the NDC, Sami Jemfi there. Now, moving on to other stories, state prosecutors are left with no other choice but to consider starting a fresh trial for Gregory Afoko. A 7-member jury, for short, a while ago, returned a 4-3 not guilty verdict for the charges of murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Mr. Afoko, who is a brother of former MPP chairman Paul Afoko, has for the past 8 years been standing trial over the murder of former MPP regional chairman Adams Mahama. The jury, however, found his co-accused person, Asake Alangdi, guilty of the offense of conspiracy to commit murder. He has been sentenced to death, but his lawyers are already questioning the verdict. Legal Affairs correspondent Joseph Akabile joins us with all the details. Joe, first, remind us of what exactly this case was about and how it got to this point.
So, Samuel, you recall sometime in 2015, just before the 2016 election, there were a number of issues within the ranks of the governing New Patriotic Party, at that time an opposition party, specifically has to do with leadership control. And we saw that play out in the Upper East region, where the regional chairman died of acid burns. He had arrived home in his vehicle when acid was poured on him, and he died of excessive acid burns. And he is reported to have told his wife, who had run to his rescue while she heard him shouting, that it was Gregory Afoko who had poured the acid on him. And Gregory Afoko is the brother of Paul Afoko, who at the time was the NPP national chairman. We know that subsequently, Paul Afoko was suspended, with his brother being arrested and put before court to stand trial. After about 3 years of trial, with the NPP in power now, the case was truncated when Asaki Alangde, the other accused person who had been on the run since 2015, was apprehended with the assistance of Interpol and brought back into the country. So the Attorney General took the view that he wanted to restart the trial all over again. And so the trial commenced afresh. And a total of 16 witnesses were called to testify, including family members and the wife of the deceased Adams Mahama, police investigators, and a pathologist, among others, all testified to make the case that it was Asaki Alangde and Gregory Afoko who conspired to commit the murder of Adams Mahama and actually committed the murder of Adams Mahama. And so that is how far we've come by way of this particular case. The two individuals denied the allegations and insisted that they did not commit any crime.
Let's talk about the verdict first, Gregory Afoko.
So for the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, the jury, by a 4-3 not guilty verdict, came to the conclusion that he did not commit the crime of conspiracy to commit murder. Again, on the charge of murder against Gregory Afoko, 4-3 decision, they said that he did not commit the crime of murder. And for capital offenses like murder, the standard is that to sustain a verdict of guilty, the decision must be unanimous, that is 7-0. And so in the circumstances, it means that there has been a mistrial in the case of Gregory Afoko for the two offenses that were leveled against him.
How about the other accused person?
So for the charge of murder, interestingly, they found Asaki not guilty. That is by 4-3. So 4 of the jurors came to the conclusion that he's not guilty. 3 said he was guilty of the charge of murder. So again, it means that for the charge of murder, there was a mistrial as well. They couldn't get a unanimous decision. Then comes a very confusing part, which has left the lawyers quite troubled, is that on the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, he was found guilty by 7-0. And so, per Section 23, the court took the view that of Act 29, the Criminal and Other Offences Act, it indicates that where you are charged with conspiracy to commit an offence and you are found guilty, you'll be punished just like a substantive offence. And so the court took the view that the charge should be, or the punishment for that offence should be, the death by the hanging. And so it imposed that punishment on him.
You stated there that the lawyers are unhappy.
Yes, the main concern arising is that if he's been found guilty by unanimous 7-0 of being guilty of the offence of conspiracy to commit murder, the question they're asking is, who did he conspire with? Because the other person is alleged to have conspired with. The same jurors came to the conclusion by 4-3 that he's not guilty of the charge of conspiracy. And so there was a mistrial in that particular instance, while the three who said Gregory did not conspire with Asaki joined the four to now say that Asaki, on the other hand, by 7-0, is guilty of the offense of conspiracy. So they say that this is a verdict that is problematic and cannot be allowed to stand, for which reason they intend to challenge it.
Any idea whether the state will push for a fresh trial?
We understand that the chief state attorneys that handle this particular matter intend to first brief the Attorney General's office on this. For now, the court has directed for a retrial, but the prosecutorial powers rest within the Attorney General. We understand that they will study this decision and they will decide the next line of action.
Grateful. Joseph Akable is our legal affairs correspondent there. You're also watching the Joy News Prime. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back with more stories. Stay with us. Welcome back from the break. Now, a latest baseline study published by the National Communication Commission for Civic Education, NCCE, on preventing and containing violent extremism has revealed that some Ghanaians are now willing to encourage their family members or close friends to join extremist groups in the 8 regions of the northern part of Ghana. Even though the number is relatively low, the NCCE says it is a worrying situation which needs intensive and targeted education for the youth in particular to prevent them from being radicalized or influencing others to join extremist groups. My colleague MFA Pao joins me with the details of this report via Zoom. MFA, can you share with us the regions that have been captured in this report?
Well, Brace, and the regions we are told, according to this report, is the northern region, we have the OT region, we have the Upper East region, Upper West, Northeast, and Bono East region. 8 regions in all covered in this baseline report.
How about the level of knowledge of individuals within selected study regions and districts recruited into extremist groups?
Okay, so across the study regions, Brace, the northern and upper east regions recorded the highest figure of 30.4% each. And then this was followed by Bono East and then OT regions, and then Northeast and Upper West regions follow closely. Well, 2 regions, however, did not record such information. They were the Savannah region and the Bono regions.
Any recommendations they gave of the findings?
Some interesting recommendations and conclusions according to this NCCE report. So it was observed that a higher proportion of the female respondents had knowledge about persons recruited into violent extremist groups compared to their counterparts, which are males. Well, additionally, the study found that women could play a critical role in the perpetration of acts of violence. Therefore, strategies that are designed to prevent and contain violent extremism should be incorporated into gender equality tools to ensure women's inclusion and participation. Well, other portions of the report also goes on to say that it's pointing out that there is the need to seriously tackle chieftaincy disputes and other forms of conflict and violence acts that are dotted across the study regions, which have the potential to breed violent extremist activities. It also recommended that local and national offices of the National Peace Council, religious leaders, CSOs and security agencies, right, and also regional house of chiefs, traditional councils must be actively involved in the fight against violent extremism. Well, we know why they are focusing on the northern region because of the potential threats that our neighboring countries pose. The report also observed that persons with disability were mostly denied access to some public facilities due to lack of disability-friendly facilities in those public places. So it is therefore recommended that government enforces the implementation of the Disability Act, which exists already, which is Act 715. And then finally, Grace, The issue of unemployment was also observed to be among the key drivers of this radicalization into violent extremist activities. Well, this was also reiterated by some key informants as part of the root causes of this radicalization. Then they recommended that the government and the private sector provide employment avenues, because unemployment issues also were raised top of this particular study, particularly for the youth, who they say form a bulge of Ghana's population, to prevent them from being susceptible to the influence of extremist groups. We are told, pay them as much as $600 to be part of these groups. Then they take them there for these trainings, and then they can perpetrate these acts. So basically, this is what this NCC baseline report talks about, Grace.
Interesting recommendations in that particular report there. Moving on to other stories. A Love News visit to some schools in the Ashanti region has revealed some caterers under the school feeding program have resumed work. Pupils in State, Experimental and Aja cluster of schools are among schools where students were served lunch on Wednesday. But the leadership of the striking caterers is not perturbed by the defiance of the caterers. For almost a month, the caterers have been on strike, demanding unpaid arrears, an increase in the feeding grant. A leading member of the striking caterers, Dorothy Ofori-Sapong, believes the caterers who have resumed work are favored by the authorities. There is more in the following report.
I think it's 1 out of thousands, because looking at Ashanti region, we are 600 or more. And if you see one person or two people cooking, it means that it's 1 out of 1,000. And I also believe that those people, they have advantage over the poor women, because they know how to get their money, and that is why they are comfortable doing it. Otherwise, I don't see why they should cook.
Have you been able to confront these women, and what was their reaction? What did they tell you?
Yes, personally, I asked one woman, and she told me she can't wait to... She's having some stuff there, like she has some beans and then some rice over there, and she wouldn't want to throw them away just because we are on strike, so she would rather cook for the children, and that is why she's cooking. Oh no, a lot of them, majority, about 98%, they are poor. Those who can be on their feet and cook, they are about 2% out of the 1,000, and so we believe that there is something going on. Otherwise, I don't see why you will cook at this time. You don't know how much they are going to pay you. If you cook this time, it means that we are going back to the third term, the 3 terms. Because we have last year third term 1, we've cooked the first term, and now this is the second term, making the 3 terms. So are we now going by 3 terms before one term is paid? No. And I don't think those women really understand what is going on. So we can't force them.
Pupils in some basic schools have bemoaned the poor nature of food served under the school feeding program. The students raised the concerns during Joy News' checks in some schools in Accra over the declaration of a nationwide strike by the school feeding program. Now, my colleague James Kwesi Aveji has more in the following report.
So we've been to some 2 public schools in Accra, and what we have picked up is that all 2 schools, the caterers in all 2 schools have reported to work. In fact, and where we are right now, we may not be able to identify the school because the officials that we have been speaking with would want it to remain so for the fear of victimization, what they call victimization, since they have decided to defy the odds of the national directive. But they explained to me that the reason why they have decided to defy the odds is for the interest of the students. The indication we have is that they have reported to school and they are feeding the kids. As you can see, the school we are right now is serving the children banku with okra soup actually, and so that's what they are feeding the kids. In the other school we went, they would not allow us to take any form of interaction or visuals from what is happening, but the assurance they gave us is that the caterers are actually at work and feeding the children. We can interact with some of the children to know what they feel, whether they actually know the caterers are not supposed to be at work at all, and they are what they feel about this whole dish that they have been.
Please, yes.
You have heard that they are supposed to be on strike.
Yes.
But are they on strike?
No.
Why?
please, because the food that the caterers are cooking for us is not good at all. They don't bring for us yam and koto breast, no meat, no anything, no egg. And the bonku too, sometimes the soup is water. They are not cooking it well. The beans and the rest of the food too are not good at all.
Now to other stories. Work has begun on the Porto's radioed access route around the Nungwa interchange construction site to ease traffic flow. This comes after a Joy News report on the poor state of the road since work stalled a couple of months ago. Information available to Joy News indicates that contractors working on the facility, among other infrastructure projects across the country, have parked out of sight in wait for the outcome of government's debt restructuring program. As commuters wait for the resumption of work, the onset of rains are compounding their woes on the road. Some of them have been complaining bitterly about the distraction the road has been causing to their vehicles when Joy News MFA Etiamwa Eli visited the Nungwa interchange site last week.
Huge tipper trucks offloading chippings on sections of the Nungwa intersection. We also counted many other heavy-duty machines, including excavators, bulldozers, and leveling machines. This is the first time in months the construction team is returning to site. Work on the interchange has stalled since February 2023. After Joy News reported it, in a matter of just a week, the construction has commenced. The interchange connects to Tamahabo, Spintex, and parts of Teshi and La. Every day, hundreds of commuters use the road. Until February 2023, persons traveling the stretch were filled with hope and joy in anticipation of a great relief from the notorious traffic which has since time immemorial characterized the intersection at Nungwa Barrier. Despair has now replaced the joy. Abdul Rashid is clearly disappointed with the pace of work. For those using the stretch for the first time, it will certainly be their last.
In your experience, is it better?
No, for now it's not better.
Will you use this stretch again?
No, for now I will not. Until they are done with it.
Why won't you use it again?
No, it's very bad and too slow.
The contractors are back on site now, but there are bigger issues to deal with.
Since works stalled on this interchange for quite some time, well, rainwater has rather colonized the place and is threatening to stall the work that is being done here. Just as you can see, it's a pool of water that has taken over an entire section of the road.
Constant education on food safety among market women through the Joy Clean Ghana campaign. Netherlands Food Partnership has donated 30 tables to market women in Agbogbloshie to stop them from displaying foodstuff on the bare ground. My colleague Prince Oswansa was with the team and has come through with this report.
At the Agbogbloshie market, traders display foodstuff on the bare floor of the road, exposing them to dust and flies. The market women arrange these foodstuff in such a way that they will attract the attention of potential customers using the road. Some of the market women, in doing so, paid little or no attention to food safety. But an environmental health specialist at the University of Ghana, Benjamin Ofori, has urged the market women to desist from such practices.
By engaging the traders to appreciate the fact that the sale of foodstuffs on the bare floor or on the ground is not good for healthy, nutritional status. Even at the household level, I don't think you keep your foodstuffs on the floor. Not forgetting about the possibility of contamination.
As a result of the constant education on food safety through the Joy Clean Ghana campaign, Netherlands Food Partnership has donated 30 tables to market women at Agbogbloshie. Cecilia Jima Akule is the project backbone support.
Activities that we did, this has been going on for about 2 years, and we have 4 groups. So this is just one of the groups. We have the other group that is looking into the food environment and what goes into, like, let's say, the calories and the nutrients in the food.
Head of Accra Metropolitan Health and Sanitation Team, Florence Kuchi, also added that market women should continue to observe food safety.
Today, I'm so happy that due to that kind of advocacy, people have seen it and they have come forward. This shouldn't just be the end. It should be the beginning to good things that will happen. We want our Agboleshi market to be one of the cleanest and healthiest markets in Africa.
Meanwhile, the president of Greater Accra Market Women Association, Mercy Na Afroa, says the donated items will help ensure food safety in the market.
We have been educating the women on not to sell on the ground, that is on sacks and hooks on the ground, because most of the things they are selling are vegetables, they are fruits, so they have to find an appropriate place to sell.
Displaying foodstuff on the floor can expose it to bacteria and other infections, making it unsafe for human consumption. A report by Prince Owusu Ansah read to you.
As we're watching Joy News Prime, we'll take a quick break. We'll be back with Showbiz. Stay with us. All right, so welcome back. Now, time for us to bring you Showbiz. And who else than the beautiful-looking Becky Bex? Mama Ga.
Oh, yeah, Mama V or Mama Ga. Mercury, for Nama.
F1A.
So we're very excited. I'm excited because Afro pop star Kitty. But this evening, let's talk about comedian Obian Ponsa. So Braze, I had a conversation with him, and he's been talking about the comedy industry here in Ghana and also what he is doing in his own capacity to get the comedy industry to another level. Obian Ponsa, everybody.
Looks like you're having a great year. Recently you were in London, you're back home here. How is the year going for you? Do you have like a lineup of things that you're doing? And how are preparations going for you ahead of all the things that you're preparing?
Yeah, preparations are well in place. What's needed is funding. Yes, there are a couple of programs we plan on putting together, like more like a comedy festival where we have different comedians from different countries join the Ghanaian comedians here, do it right here. That's something we are thinking on and working on, which we would need funding for. The plan this year is to do more of African countries, to know other comedians in different countries, relate with them. There's a lot Africans have to tell. And so the more united we are and the more focused we are, I believe that people would, our voices will be heard eventually, and then the good Netflix deals that people are enjoying, we stand a chance of gaining that. So yeah, it's all work. My plan this year is actually to do more African countries, do Kenya, Uganda, maybe Zambia again, Rwanda, I'll be there again, South Africa as well. So yeah, that's what we are on this time.
And this industry, I know that it's a growing industry. A few of you are trying your best to obviously put this comedy industry on the global map. How is it going, and what is your contribution to this goal?
Yeah, it's going pretty well, because what we are doing now is we realize that when you work hard, people eventually recognize you. And so we decided to put our work into like a weekly work, more like organize a comedy club where we would go there every week to try new material out, because we realized that our audience were often the same people, and jokes, you cannot be repeating them every time, and so you'd have to be coming up with new jokes for every occasion. Yeah, and so by God's grace and dint of hard work, we've been able to start a comedy club at Tesano 2927 Comedy Club, which has run for about 2 years now. So it's a step in the right direction here, and that's the work we are putting in. To also do a couple of international shows, travel to Rwanda, for other people to also know that West Africa, there are comedians here. Because usually when West Africa is mentioned, it's Nigeria that is mentioned. But now Ghanaian comedians are getting our space and our due recognition as well. So it's beautiful. It's a beautiful movement. It's young, but the future is very bright.
You spoke about persistence, you spoke about hard work. How much of a hard work do you have to put into your career as a comedian?
A lot, especially for Ghana here. Our people usually get tired easily, you understand? So you have to keep impressing them. And the thing is that if you're not careful, you'll be raised to a certain level and it gets into your head, somebody else comes, they just drop you, you understand? So I'm not too much about the fans and you are doing well, no. I'm the hardest person on myself. I check myself and see that, okay, is there something I can do better? Like this performance, when I get home, I'm going to like ruse over the whole thing and then think where I went wrong. I've recorded myself. Okay. So I watch and then decide where I could better. And because usually when you meet a Ghanaian audience, you may be doing 3 punchlines. But when you go to Zambia or Rwanda, you cannot do 3 punchlines, you understand? So it's all about being very careful and knowing, reading, watching people who have done it before. My mentor is Dave Chappelle. So like I watch him a lot and then I learn a lot from him as well. So yeah, that is what I'm doing in my place as well.
Well, Obi and Ponsa there, but Brace, today is Thursday, happens to be a day to also remember because, or a day in history, because Francis Kwame Nkrumah, so he was a Ghanaian politician and he was also the first Prime Minister and President of Ghana. Having led the Gold Coast to independence. What do you remember?
You should have asked me if I know his first name.
Okay.
Anyway, but I remember him for that famous speech where he said that when he was declaring independence,
right,
and said the battle has ended. Ghana, our beloved country, is now free forever. And then he added something that we've not thought about it.
Right.
That we should work hard to prove to the white man that the African or the black man is capable of managing his own affairs. We should go back and ask whether we have been able to do exactly what this man said.
So he died of prostate cancer in April 27, which is actually
without any property in his name
today. Yeah.
Any property to his name in Ghana. Now you go to his hometown where he left one, that thing is gone.
There's a lot we need to
know about him.
We're still learning, and we're grateful that he could do the things he did for us, and we're grateful that you led the Prime News this evening.
All right, so thank you so much for being with us. We're grateful that you could spend your night, your evening with us. There's more news on myjoyonline.com. Up next is Prime Business. My name is Samuel Kojo Brace.